Blowouts are a lot of fun, but it's what comes after that the Reds really have to get right.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Reds. My name is Jeff Carr, and I am so glad that you are with me here today. I am a lifelong Cincinnati Reds fan. Seriously, you got the paper pictures to prove it. And this is my 6th season hosting the Locked On Reds podcast. And of course, Locked On Reds is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every single day, and every single day we seek to make this show for everyone, every Reds fan out there, because we love to talk about the big thing on everybody's mind. We want to dive into some geeky numbers when they make sense, and we love overreacting to the everyday motions of this MLB season. But I'm very glad that you are with me here today because the Reds are set up to try and win a series. So we'll preview what the weekend matchups look like later on in this show. Andrew Abbott had a wacky start, but it actually impressed me quite a bit. I'll tell you why coming up here in a few minutes, but we will start with yet another offensive explosion that we just need to see the Reds do something with. That's all coming up on this episode of Locked On Reds that is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah, the right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Check out Booking.com for your stay today. And Thursday night, the Reds lineup showed up into St. Louis and absolutely dominated. They went nuts. Was it the return of Noelvi Marte? Was it Will Benson breaking out of his slump finally? Or is it some kind of peripheral new dad strength that Tyler Stevenson imparted to the rest of the lineup? Probably all three, something like that. First off, congrats to Tyler Stevenson on that. He actually left right before the first pitch of the game because he got the call that his daughter was about to be born. I've been looking on Instagram and things like that to see if there's any sort of post about it or something. Nothing yet, but hopefully all is going well there. But everyone was celebrating. If you saw the shot that they showed on the television broadcast, the entire dugout was jumping up and down. He was so happy on the phone. You could tell he's talking and getting ready to go. He went and had to catch a plane and all that great stuff. It was crazy. And it was kind of a fun way for this lineup to just kind of forget about baseball for 2 seconds. I kind of think, and I'm not going to go too crazy with any sort of analysis on this, but maybe there was some sort of effect that had on them. It was kind of like took them out of the game for a minute, and they remembered that life is more than the fact that they've lost 8 straight series, or that they've lost a bunch of series in a row, and they've lost 8 series where they've won the first game of the series, but they end up losing 8 different times this season. We'll get into that here in just a minute. But for a night, they forgot about that because they went crazy. Miles Mikolas had no chance. And I tweeted this out during the game. Petition to have the Reds face Miles Mikolas every time they go to St. Louis, every time they play the Cardinals, because they killed him. This was the list of guys that had multi-hit days for the Reds. Jonathan India, Elly De La Cruz, Spencer Steer, Noelvi Marte in his first game of the season, Will Benson, who's been on an 0 for 25 slump, and Stuart Fairchild, who doesn't hit right-handers. Massive, massive game for so many people. We'll start, of course, first with Noelvi Marte coming back, and all of the worries, all of the hand-wringing, and, oh, man, I don't know that he's ready. He's not hitting at AAA, the rehab thing. Didn't matter. Guy had 3 hits, had a double. His first hit was a double. He went the other way with a single on a breaking ball on the outer half of the plate. There was so much about his performance that it looked as if he hadn't missed a beat, even though he'd missed 80 games. So here in game 81, he was able to come in and hit the ground running. Also, added in an RBI, and he scored 3 times. So He got on base 3 times with 3 hits, and he scored all 3 of those times. Another thing with this, Will Benson, thank the Lord, he finally broke out of that slump. Oh my goodness. I had to be realistic for a minute about Will Benson and say maybe it was time to send him down. Maybe it is time to give him a mental break and see if he can work through it. Well, he worked through it against Miles Michaelis. Apparently that's all he needed. He went crazy. 2 for 4 with a double, 2 RBIs, and 2 runs. He had a sac fly for one of those RBIs, scored both times he got on base, and the 2 outs that he made, they were not strikeouts. The 2 outs that he made, he had a just absolute blast of a hit toward the wall that Dylan Carlson made a magnificent catch on later on in the game. I want to say it was like the 8th or the 9th inning. This was by the time the game was all well in hand and stuff, but he was absolutely crushing the baseball every single time. Even his sac fly was at the warning track on the opposite field, left field. So he looked like the Will Benson from 2023. Now, I'm not going to say it. In fact, we're going to spend the whole first segment not saying the 2 words, those words that in some way, shape, or form, when you put them together, they sound like we're back. I'm just saying that to say that I'm not saying it. But he looked good last night. So did the Reds. Overall, just a fantastic game. And I mentioned Stuart Fairchild as well. Quick shout out to his performance. Right-handed pitcher on the mound. He goes 2 for 4. He also has a double. It was a double parade for the Reds. 2 RBIs and a run. Spencer Steer with a big-time bomb of a home run. He had 2 hits on the day. And Elly got the run scoring started in the first inning after Jonathan India hit a single, and then Elly tripled him home. If you see the highlight of that, by the time India's rounding third, he's kind of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that this, he was like, woof, and going first to home is a lot. I don't think he's done that this year, or if he has, it's been few and far between. But that was fantastic. And Elly gets his 38th steal. So that's kind of like trying to encompass all of the hitting magnificence that was Thursday night for the Reds. But forgive me for not going too crazy about this and making some kind of big claim that the Reds are, that word. Because I've done that before this season. And I've been wrong. A couple of times. It's a couple of times I keep trying to declare that they are, yes, but they haven't been because they aren't. Because they still are chasing everyone. And as much as this National League wildcard race is just, it seems like it's right there, I'm not ready to say that they're going to jump back in. They still have plenty of time to get back into it, but there still needs to be a lot more about this. There's a lot of fun to be had when you look at these performances, and it's guys that you want, and you know that this team is going to count on the rest of the year. I said it in passing at the end of yesterday's podcast, in case you missed the end of it, but I said it in passing toward the end of that podcast where it feels like if Will Benson gets right, this lineup will get right and become more consistent. Again, one game does not mean that a guy is right. He still has lots of work to do. But if he can take this and build off this momentum and get his season back on track, I think that's going to go a long way to the rest of the lineup doing that. But that's kind of the same thing that I have about the rest of the team, because games like this are supposed to impart momentum, but they haven't for the Reds this year. I saw a stat about scoring 11 or more runs. It's twice now this week that they've scored 11 runs. They scored 11 runs in the first game against the Pirates. Of course, they end up losing that series. The other 4 times, this is now 6 times this season that they've done this, the other 4 times came twice against the White Sox and twice against the Rockies. So we're not going to go crazy about the 11 runs thing. But this is a stat because the Reds really need to follow up the win from last night with a win today. Because the Reds have lost 8 series this season after winning the first game. You're playing with house money, and you've given house money away 8 times. They got to follow it up. And as much as this game was fun, the Reds really need more than just one good performance every so often. How do they build on this? How do they follow it up? Because this lineup has been the most inconsistent part of this team. How do they take these 11 runs and maybe go out and score 5 tonight? That'd be nice. We'll talk a little bit later on about how difficult or easy, probably difficult, that might be for this lineup. But Andrew Abbott's weird start in this game did impress me. And I'll tell you why coming up next. This episode of Locked On Reds is brought to you by Booking.com. Yeah, with summer travel heating up, especially travel to and from baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you've always secretly wanted to learn more about. Yes, we're even talking about, St. Louis, Milwaukee, Chicago, all that stuff. With hotels, bed and breakfasts, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay, even in your rival's city. It's nice to have something where you can get everything all in one place because the different travels that I've been on, Booking.com makes it so easy. From hotels that look over stadiums to family-friendly resorts, Booking.com has so many choices across the U.S. for your summer travel this MLB season. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. Book today on Booking.com, on the site, or on the Booking.com app. And as baseball season goes along, as summer goes along, FanDuel has so many different promotions and different things for you to take advantage of. All kinds of different boosts. They love to boost the same game parlays during baseball season, which is great for the Elly parlay. I mean, Elly is as hot as the surface of the sun right now at the plate, and you got to be taking advantage of the Elly parlay over at FanDuel. Plus, if you find yourself a nice boost or something like that, they can usually boost it, sometimes up to 30% as far as what your payout could be. Of course, we're talking about the Elly parlay, which is Elly to get at least a steal, at least a run scored, and at least 2 total bases in a game. Bam, hits that parlay. Most of the time it's around plus 400, 4-1 odds, maybe even 5-1 odds, depending on who's pitching. But he's been hitting everybody this here recently, so go hit it over at FanDuel.com and check out all of the promotions that they have going on this baseball season. Add that bid win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. You've got to check out Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And also, speaking of everydayers, shout out to our everydayers out there. Thanks for making us a part of your day. Later on today, here on Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, we're going live. Got a live show for you. Steve will be back, and Steve and I will be discussing mid-season awards for the Cincinnati Reds. It's officially 81 games into the season, so what are we looking at? Who's got what? Who's the best pitcher? Who's the best hitter? We're going to discuss that at 3 p.m. Eastern Time here on the Locked On Reds YouTube channel. But going back to last night's game, the Reds just go crazy, 11-4 win. Andrew Abbott, though, wasn't crisp, but he impressed me with his ability to keep the Reds in the game because he himself didn't have his best stuff. I mean, consider this. He threw 5 innings. He got up to over 100 pitches in those 5 innings. He gave up just 2 hits, and he only gave up 2 runs, and it was off of a 2-run homer by Nolan Arenado, which was hilarious because the first time that Andrew Abbott faced Nolan Arenado, he struck him out on this ridiculous breaking ball that never was anywhere near the zone, and Nolan Arenado was like reaching out over the plate trying to swing at it and just looked foolish. And so then he comes up his next at bat and hits a home run because, well, baseball. That's what happens. But he even gets the win in this game after walking 6 batters. He had more walks than innings pitched. He only had 2 strikeouts on the day. He did not have his best stuff. In fact, and Charlie Goldsmith tweeted this out during the game, he is the first pitcher this season to walk 6 batters and get a win. In fact, that sort of statistical oddity, 6 walks and a win, has only happened 13 times over the last 5 seasons. That's how weird that was, but it was so impressive because it just wasn't all there for him. That wasn't his day. He even says it in the post-game interview.
Yeah, probably one of the worst games I've pitched in my life. Just all over the place with timing, mechanic-wise and whatnot. But yeah, team picked me up, and we got to win. That's all that matters.
That impresses me to no end because there are plenty of pitchers in the major leagues. I'm talking about the top of the world when it comes to baseball, who when they're on, doesn't matter. We've seen them most of the time. There's some pitcher that you never heard of, and then all of a sudden they face the Reds and they go crazy because they're professional pitchers at the top of their game, and everything was working for them in that game, in that instance. If you look up some of their names right now, they might not be anywhere. But I digress. The whole thing about this is a good pitcher does this. They limit the damage even when they're pitching their worst game. Like he said, he just said it himself. That was the worst game he's ever pitched. And he only gave up 2 hits and 2 runs. And he got the win. The 6 walks could have been horrible, and he even kind of went into detail. I don't have another clip of this, but he went into detail of his in the post-game press conference where he's just like, dude, I would have understood if the score was 11-7 or 11-8, but my defense picked me up. And part of that is he was putting the pitches in the right spot. He was really, he was missing barrels. We always say this, right? If you're not missing bats, at least miss barrels. And he was doing that. Now, there were still some hard-hit balls. There were some great plays in the outfield. Stuart Fairchild, again. Look at this. 2 segments, 2 mentions of Stuart Fairchild. How about that? But makes this amazing catch up against the wall. Saves extra bases. You had a lot of good plays all over the field. Now, there were some moments where I was like, man, they really should have turned 2 there, but it didn't hurt them this game. It seems to hurt them more often than not, but it didn't get them on Thursday night. So part of it was luck. That's just baseball. Baseball has luck involved. You're never going to cut out luck. But when luck is on your side, you've also still got to make a few pitches here and there, and he was able to do that. So that's what impressed me to no end, because when we look at this Reds rotation, it's easy to pinpoint the top 2 guys. Who's next after that? I think Andrew Abbott is making a case that it is clearly him. Obviously, Graham Ashcraft is just struggling right now. Frankie Montas, one day, flirts with a no-hitter. The next day, can't get out of the 3rd inning. So he's not necessarily consistent. And you're fine with him in your rotation. I'm just saying, in the idea of who is the 3rd best pitcher in this rotation, it is clearly Andrew Abbott. Because when he is on, the Reds are going to win. But if they're also going to win when he's off, boy, that's real good. That's and we throw this word around a lot, but that is ace level stuff. Not saying that he is the ace. I think we know who the ace of this staff is, but he has shown me so much over his couple of years in the major leagues. But it felt like it all came together on Thursday night where it's just like, man, dude is walking. He walked the bases loaded in the 1st inning. Didn't allow a run. That's impressive. That's impressive. If the Reds can win when he doesn't have his A game, then I'm happy every 5th day that Andrew Abbott gets the pitch. The Reds, they get this win. They get this big blowout win over the Cardinals. but they have got to follow it up with another win. And maybe even a series win, which in 4 games, that's tough to do on the road. I get it. But we'll look at what they're up against coming up next. If you are not getting down to the ballpark this season with Game Time, you need to fix that right now, because that's how I get to the ballpark. That's how you should too. They've got the best last minute deals when it comes to baseball. I always go down to the Reds game, hang out around the banks, find a little watering hole, get a cold beverage, something like that, and then find the best deals on the Game Time app. You can get some crazy good lightning deals and stuff like that close to Game Time. Game Time has so many great deals, and they show you the all-in pricing right there. When you click on it, when it says it's selling you a ticket for $15, you click on it, you know what your total is? $15. They don't add a bunch of fees or anything like that onto it. They tell you exactly what you're paying for, so that's what you know what you're getting. And they show you, if you travel with the Reds, or if you just go to another city and want to see another stadium, they can show you your view from your seat before you even buy your ticket. That way you're not stuck behind a pole, or you got some kind of weird angle to the plate, something like that. Check out the Game Time app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. So there you go. Great prices. Plus your first purchase, you get $20 off with the code LOCKEDONMLB. Download the Game Time app today and start getting to the game the best way you can with Game Time, because they've got the last minute tickets at the lowest price, guaranteed. You can catch every pitch of the Reds' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Reds. Also, bookmark si.com/MLB/Reds, or better known as CincinnatiRedsTalk.com, for written content about your Cincinnati Reds. Got a lot of great stuff up over there, talking about some trades, talking about some, half season grades and things like that. So much to consume, including, how important Noelvi Marte is to this team coming back when he is, because they're going to need him. Coming up this weekend, the Reds, we'll take a look at this pitching staff, because the Reds really need to win tonight and Sunday to win the series. I have a hard time believing that they're going to beat Sonny Gray on Saturday. I think it'd be nice. I think it'd be kind of a whole thing, because we said, and I have been told, that it was between the Reds and the Cardinals for Gray, and he ultimately chose the Cardinals. Maybe Reds need to show him that he picked wrong on Saturday, even though Sonny Gray's had an amazing season. Talk about him in just a moment, because tonight Frankie Montas goes up against Andre Palante. Andre Palante is a name that you would have heard. Only on a few occasions. He's faced the Reds 13 total times, but he has 3 games started against the Reds in his career. Now this season, his numbers aren't so great. He's started 5 games. He's pitching 14 total. And he's got an ERA over 5. So you're going to look at that and say, boy, this Reds lineup, they should get right against him. But hold your horses on that, because one of the best ground ball rates in Major League Baseball is held by Andre Palante. And what do the Reds do when they face ground ball pitchers? They hit a lot of ground balls, and they don't do very well. They don't get a lot of hits. They have a lot of ground outs against guys like this. And he is very good at limiting hard contact as well. So there's going to be soft ground balls on the infield. We're going to have to hope that the Cardinals' defense kind of falters a little bit against Palante. Plus, when you look at this as well, in his career, he's only pitched since 2022, so it's not that long. But he's faced the Reds 13 times, like I said, started 3 games against them. He's only allowed 5 earned runs in 29 innings pitched against the Reds. 26 hits, and he's never allowed a home run. The Reds have never hit a long ball off of Andre Palante. He's got a weird strikeout to walk split in these 29 innings pitched. He has only 21 strikeouts and 15 walks. So maybe the Reds, the key to this is they just got to make him throw a lot of pitches, because it feels like when they swing, it's going to be weak contact on the ground. And it's going to be a frustrating game. This is going to be one of those games that we're just praying for 5 runs, maybe hoping for 3. It's going to be rough. Hopefully Frankie Montas can keep the ball in the strike zone and in the park. Saturday, it's going to be a tough game. Carson Spires is starting. I'm excited to see him start again. And quite frankly, I'm excited to see him start against a team not named the Pirates, because it feels like that's the only team he's pitched against this year. And he's going to go against Sonny Gray. Sonny Gray's got 14 games started this year with 83 innings pitched. He's going to be an all-star. He's in conversation for Cy Young. It's early. Wouldn't go too crazy about that, but 2.81 ERA in those 83 and a third. In fact, the 2.1 ERA, when you consider his fielding independent pitching, he's actually slightly just a tiny bit unlucky because his FIP, his fielding independent pitching, is 2.6, which is the things that he can control. Walks, strikeouts, homers allowed, things like that. It's a stat that tries to remove the variables of whether or not the defense behind you is good. He has a 31% strikeout rate and a pretty decent ground ball rate. The one thing that I will say, if the Reds can make contact, if they're not stuck in strikeout prison against Sonny Gray, they got a shot because he has given up some hard contact this season. His average exit velocity against him is actually below league average. He's given up a lot more harder contact than people think. It's just he's doing pretty good at missing bats altogether, and he's not walking people. A pretty above average walk rate for him this season. What's interesting is, hasn't faced the Reds since he's been traded. In fact, he's only ever faced the Reds once, and he was with the A's back in 2016 whenever he did that. So not really much to be had there by way of matchup statistics. And then on Sunday, Sunday's the game. Sunday's definitely a game that the Reds should be circling as, all right, we should get this. We should beat this guy. Lance Lynn, this season, you're going to look at the ERA and you're thinking, okay, he's having an okay season. But consider this. He has 2 more starts than Sonny Gray, and he has only 81 innings pitched as opposed to Sonny Gray's 83. So less innings per start. The Cardinals signed him to be an innings eater. He's not doing that. And his fielding independent pitching says that he's getting lucky with his 3.86 ERA. Not really striking out a ton of people. That's below average. In fact, when you look at all of his statistics, all of his analytics, all of his peripherals, everything is just slightly below average. We talked about this before on the website Baseball Savant. They have kind of color coding so that folks like me that have a little brain and need simple ways of understanding things can understand things. And they have a color coding. So if it's red, it's good, and if it's blue, it's bad. All of his stuff is blue. Now, it's not horribly blue, as if it's like, why is he in the major leagues blue? But it's all below average. Nothing is horrible, but also nothing, not one single analytic for Lance Lynn is even above average, let alone good. So this is something the Reds should take advantage of, because in his 13-year career, he's actually really good against the Reds. This is all the matchup stuff is kind of fun, and I kind of caution you on getting too excited about different matchup stuff, and even like I said with Andre Palante, he's really held the Reds down in his short career. So is Lance Lynn, but matchup statistics are not predictive. They just say what has happened. And in the past, Lance Lynn has more wins against the Reds than he has against any other team. Not combined, but like, there's no other team he's beating more than the Reds. He's won 12 times against the Reds. And in 122 and 2/3 innings, he has a 3.2 ERA against the Reds. And his whip, his walks plus hits per innings pitched. So basically, base runners per inning, it's barely over 1. It's 1.132. So, while Lance Lynn's had a rough year so far, he's not had a rough career against the Reds. Take what you will. But I look at this and I still say, I think that the Reds can get up on Lynn. I think the Reds can get up on Palante if they're patient and they wait on their pitch. foul off the ones that he wants them to dribble to the second baseman, and fight off and make these at-bats long, because this Cardinals bullpen is taxed, man. They had a doubleheader against the Braves on Wednesday. One of those games went to extras. And then they still had to use the pen on Thursday against the Reds, even though it wasn't like their main guys. But, I mean, we didn't see like Ryan Helsley or anything like that. But we saw some of their other dudes. They are taxed. If you can get up on Palante early, if you can force him to throw a lot of pitches early, you might get into their pen early. And that would be a great way to do this, because Saturday is just going to be so tough. Saturday is a toss-up for me. I don't like predicting Reds losses, but I have a hard time predicting a Reds win on Saturday. But I think that the Reds, if they can carry this momentum, build off of what they did on Thursday, do like they did not do in the Pirates series, do it now. And you could possibly win 3 out of 4. And you win 3 out of 4 from the Cardinals, you start to kind of change the narrative around this team. Because you know what happens when you win? Well, it cures all ails. That's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Reds podcast. Thanks, as always, for making us your first listen every single day. Everydayers, remember, coming up at 3 p.m. today, Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, on the Locked On Reds YouTube page, we're going to have a bonus live edition of the podcast. Steve will be back with me, and we will be talking about half-season awards for your Cincinnati Reds, and who's our pick for MVP, who's our pick for best pitcher, things like that. That's all coming up on the live show later on today. But until then, you can bet and you can trust that we will be Locked On Reds every single day.